You're listening to Bigger Than Belief, real stories about real faith with real people whose belief is unbelievable. I'm your host, Adam Duxter. Thanks for listening to Bigger Than Belief. Today is Thursday, March 12th, and this week we have something really cool, but a little different than what we've been doing because we're going to feature this week in a two-part episode, highlighting a man maybe that you've never heard of, but a man who has a remarkable story, especially as we're watching what's going on overseas in Iran. I first came across Armin Assadi's story on Facebook, just like a lot of other people did. His wife's post about his personal connection and thoughts on the situation unfolding in Iran has been shared now thousands of times and has garnered tens of thousands of reactions. Armin lives in the Twin Cities metro with his wife and kids, but his life started across the world in Iran. He's the son of a family who had a different faith than that of the Iranian government and had family ties to the previous regime. Simply put, Armin and his family were a target from as soon as he can remember. Part one of this two-part episode focuses on the decision Armin's father made not to submit to the Iranian government's request to believe in Islam, leading Armin and his family to escape in the middle of the night from Iran into Pakistan. The story feels right out of a movie. And tomorrow, on Friday, March 13th, we'll hear part two, focusing on Armin's own faith fallout and his faith conversion that happened decades later. Armin's perspective is just that of one person, but I thought as we're all working to make sense of the world and the situation going on in Iran right now, this first-person view could be engaging and intriguing to learn from. It's an episode I hope you'll love and one I certainly learned a lot from myself. So now, Armin Assadi.
Now welcome on a very special guest and someone who I'm glad that we were able to get into the studio on a really short notice. We just connected this past weekend. Armin Assadi joins us now. Armin, I can only imagine, even starting with the fact that you have had social media posts go mega viral the last couple of days. Even just with that alone, the level of overwhelm that you must have felt these last few days. But when you take into account what we're watching play out on a global stage, I mean, how would you describe the last week and a half in a word or two?
Oh, man, I think you have to go back further than a week and a half. I mean, it really started in January when the protests started happening in Iran. That's where, a lot of the emotions really started picking up. And you go through sadness to rage to grieving, mourning. You start losing hope, and then you start seeing, hey, there might be some kind of intervention to help the people, and then you start having hope, and then you lose hope again, and then all of a sudden there is intervention, so you do have hope, but then the intervention is going to cause more death, so then you're like sad again, and you're mourning again, but you're more hopeful and joyful, and I don't know, it's such a mixed bag of emotions. I don't know if there's any clear, concise way to say how any of us feel about it, but right now I would say we feel hopeful and grateful more than anything.
You, your wife, and your kids, you live in the Twin Cities metro.
That's right.
Your story, though, starts in Iran.
That's right.
It's where you were born. It's where you spent your first few years. I want to spend the next little bit for people just to have a chance to hear your story. What was life for you like growing up? Because you're born in the early 80s. What do you remember from that time, just from being a kid?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of beauty in Iran, so I remember a lot of beautiful things. My grandfather's farm, which was my happy place, this massive farm with orchards and everything. I remember eating sugar canes and sitting in citrus trees and staring at the clouds moving and eating citrus and having amazing family, amazing culture. And I remember the singing, the dancing, the praying, all that kind of amazing, beautiful stuff that took place. But at the same time, growing up in Iran after the Islamic Revolution as a Baha'I, in an Islamic republic, you also face a lot of persecution. And I don't mean that in the American sense. I mean that in the literal sense of persecution, where We have martyrs in our family. You have teenage kids that have been hung from the noose simply because they were the wrong religion. The first time I started seeing people get killed, I was as young as 4 years old. And, as a kid, you don't really understand why someone is getting killed slowly, brutally, because they said the wrong words. And so I don't know. It's equal amounts of beauty and equal amounts of just horrendous, brutal, traumatic memories, and it's all mixed together, but the human brain is weird. You seem to remember the bad more than the good.
You and I both have young kids, and I can only imagine, like, you try and explain to your kid what faith is and what you believe and why it's important. But at that time, when you're experiencing all of the things going on as a kid, did you know, or have an understanding of what your faith meant, or what the faith of other people meant, or what do you remember feeling at that time?
Can I tell you a story? I don't know if this will answer your question very well, but I remember the first time having a faith conversation. And I'll give you the background on this story. So my family was pretty well off in Iran. My grandfather was the personal finance manager to the king of Iran, or the Shah of Iran. My great-grandfather was the highest-ranking military general in the Royal Persian Army. My parents were bankers, high-level bankers. So we had a really good life, But after the Islamic Revolution had taken over, what would be equivalent to, say, FBI or Homeland Security or whatever, there's two agents that came into my father's bank, and they kind of bypassed everyone, came into his office, and they had a piece of paper, and they slammed it in front of my dad. They closed the door behind them, and they had a conversation with my dad. It was more like a monologue, and they said, you have two options. One, you sign this piece of paper that says you're Muslim, and you can carry on your life as is, and you can continue to worship whatever weird practices that you have, but on paper you will be known as Muslim. Or your second option is, we take everything that you love and we take everything that you own, and little by little, until you have nothing left, including your own life. You have 24 hours to make a decision. That night, my dad came home, and in Iran, when you work a lot. So my dad would go to work before I was awake, and he would come home after I was already asleep. And I couldn't have been more than 3 years old. And he wakes me up out of my bed, stands me up, and I'm a little kid. I'm wiping sleep out of my eyes, trying to figure out what's going on. And I never see my dad cry. My dad's not a crying type. And I remember him getting down on his knees. And again, I'm like 3 years old at this time, and he's got tears in his eyes, and he sits down and he grabs my hand, and he has both my hands in one hand, and he's holding it like this. And he looks at me and he says, Armin, I just want you to know one thing. And his voice is shaking. So as a 3-year-old who's never seen their dad cry and look like that or sound like that, obviously I still remember it. But I remember him saying, hey, sometimes I just need you to know something. Not every decision that we make will be comfortable. And sometimes our decisions are based on our faith, and I just want you to understand that your faith is worth dying for. And I don't remember anything else. I mean, he kept talking. I don't remember anything else after that, but I remember him kissing me, hugging me, holding me, and that's all I remember. But the first faith conversation I truly remember as a small child, I mean, that was it, is your faith is worth dying for, because my dad had already made the decision. He's not going to lie.
To take a step back, you said your family was Baha'i.
Baha'i, yeah.
For people who don't know or aren't familiar, what does that mean, and what did that signify at the time?
Baha'i is kind of a Unitarian religion, if I could put it that way. It's the youngest religion on earth. And Christian, we have the crucifix or the cross, and in the Baha'i faith, they have their faith symbols, a 9-pointed star, and each point of the star represents an Abrahamic prophet that has come to pass, all the way up to the Prophet Muhammad, and then ending with the Prophet Baha'u'llah, which is the prophet of the Baha'i faith. But their message is a very Unitarian message that, we're all of the same God. with the same message, just from different times. But because Baha'I faith is a faith or a religion that started within Iran, the way that the Islamic regime viewed that religion, they viewed it with disdain because they looked at it as a stain upon the cloth of Islam within Iran, because we are now an Islamic regime and we have to deal with this other religion that claims to come from our homeland. And so their mission was essentially genocidal. How do we remove and eliminate anyone that would ever claim to be Baha'i?
And so your dad's refusal to sign that sheet of paper essentially was a line of demarcation in what would come next.
It was a death sentence.
What happened next?
Well, you don't really have much choice, so you just kind of live on the run like a criminal. And at first, you live on the run within the country or the borders and boundaries of the country. But, the Iran-Iraq war is going on. But as things escalate and de-escalate, and their Islamic regime, the government, as it expands and as they get more control and as they get more organized, they have more ability to actually take on different things that have nothing to do with the war, like identifying who's who, what their religion background is, how do we deal with that. And so we spent several years just living on the run, going from moving from one house to the next house to the next house, and just trying to avoid getting captured or identified. And because at the end of the day, once they find you, you might die on the spot or you might die later, but either way, you're going to die.
Do you remember, or even in the years that have followed, have been filled in, was there a conversation at any point like we should leave the country? And if so, what would that look like? If you're moving around from place to place within the country, I mean, was that always the intention, was to leave, or was there a hope maybe we can wait this out?
I think there was hope at first that maybe this is temporary, but I think it doesn't take too many years before you realize we're stuck with this and there's no escaping it. So the conversation is pretty intense. I was too young to be involved in the conversation, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten to have these conversations with my parents and my brother and sister and just get a better understanding. But the way they describe it is this, and it's intense because the way it works is you have to cross a border somewhere, whether you're going into Iraq, which not a great option when you're at war with them. You can go into Pakistan, which is an option. Some people have the luxury of flying out of Iran, but as Baha'is, you don't have that luxury. So the only thing you're left with is quite literally escaping on foot. So the best option for us is crossing over the Pakistan border. But your best odds is it's 50-50. So you're going to give an insane amount of money to these people that are on the border. What's a good comparison? Like, think about the coyotes. They're referred to as coyotes on the Mexican border. They help smuggle people into America. Exact same thing, except you're going from second world country to a third world country, Iran to Pakistan, and you give them a ton of money. They help you cross. But at the same time, those same people would get paid from the Iranian military to turn people in. So it wasn't uncommon for them to double dip, per se, where they're taking your money and then turning you in and taking the military's money. So when you bet that you can escape the country on foot across a desert, it's a 50-50 bet. I mean, you're playing blackjack with your life.
As that's going on, could you feel, or do you remember your family being able to feel like there was a target on you, given your family background and your family heritage? Could you feel like things were closing in around you? And if so, what do you remember about that time where you're moving around, but you're still in the country?
Well, just to give some perspective, I mean, there's three main categories of people that the Islamic regime was trying to eliminate from Iran. One, it was anybody that was loyal to the Pahlavi monarchy. Two was anybody that was in military leadership or was connected to it. And third was anyone that was not Shiite Muslim. My family happened to be all three. So essentially we were gay, black, and Jewish living in Nazi Germany. And so the intensity of it, the feeling of it, I mean, you can't avoid it, even if they try to. And Iranian parents, Persian parents are very good at protecting their kids in some sense, but the way they do it is they don't share a lot with you. They just try to convince you everything is okay. But as a kid, you might not know a lot about life, but you know your parents. You know what they're praying. You know why they're praying. You see them crying, hear them crying. You see them arguing and hear them arguing, and you know that they're worried about their life because that's the words that. So they might not be directly communicating to me, but in everything that they were discussing is, we could die. We could die if we stay. We could die if we go, but it seems like death is something we have to face regardless of what decision that we make. So what decision do we want to make?
What did they do?
We escaped. So we took the bet. We went to the Pakistan border and paid an egregious amount of money to this group of people that live right in the desert, clay huts, very tribal type looking people. And you go there, each person brings whatever they can actually physically carry. That's your entire livelihood. So whatever you can fit in a bag that you can carry is your entire livelihood. You go to the border, you give them everything that they need. They kind of give you a debrief of, hey, here's what's going to look like. I'm not in that conversation because I'm a child. And at, I don't know, probably 3 a.m, these guys come bursting in to these huts that we're all sleeping in. They're yelling, get up, get up, get up, go, go, go. You know, and then it's super intense. And as a kid, you're already terrified and frozen, you know, and they're just rushing everybody, grab your stuff. And then they start demanding, everyone give your jewelry. And they start taking everyone's jewelry. You don't know if this is part of the process. You don't know if you're being robbed. You don't know, you know, and so everyone's just kind of going through the process. Like, no one can know that you're not part of us and we got to go, all right, everybody go, go, go. And it's just militant, you know, and they take probably about 10 of us, and they put us into this little tiny pickup truck with the bench seat up front and the bed in the back. And there's, I want to say, 3 guys that are the Pakistani guys that are on the border that are helping us cross. They throw us in the back of the bed of the truck. I think my brother went and sat up front. There's like a bazooka on the dash. There's guns, you know. And then they're like, you got to hang on. Do not let go. Whatever you do, hang on. If you fall off, there's no coming back. It's over. We can't see you. We can't help you. We won't be able to do anything. So you're just hearing all this intense instructions of what's about to happen. So you're like physically, and I'm at first, like my dad's holding on to me. Yeah, I thought I was shaking, but my dad is shaking, you know, and I'm shaking too, and everyone else around looks startled. And we just pack like sardines into the back of this pickup truck, and this thing takes off. And it doesn't take off like normal, you know, where you just drive straight. These guys just start doing donuts. They're just doing circles and then circle the other way. And we drive for, I don't know, a mile, mile and a half, 2 miles, however, literally doing circles the whole way. And now I understand it. Looking at it hindsight-wise, the process is they're kicking up dust so they can't see the vehicle moving for the military that's on the border looking around. So we're literally doing donuts, driving as fast as possible, going from the starting point to the next checkpoint. And then there's obviously other things that happen, but I'll just pause there just in case you have any questions.
You are how old at this point?
7.
The year is what?
1987.
What happens?
88, sorry.
What happens next? I mean, do you get through, or what happens next?
No. So they get to the next checkpoint, and the next checkpoint, it kind of feels like you're still in the middle of the desert. You have a mountain, big giant mountain, probably still another mile away, and they drop you off right there, and they're like, you have to go from here to the base of that mountain, and you have to go fast as possible. They tell you where the border guards are, border military is, and you can, you know, you may not be able to see them, but you can hear them. Sometimes you can see them. And so, my dad straps me on his back with the bed sheet, and we just start hauling tail, and we're just running as fast as we can. We're trying to get there. And, my dad smoked 2 packs a day. He's not exactly an Olympic athlete or anything. And so, he's hyperventilating, running, carrying a child, pulling a suitcase, my mother, my brother, my cousins, and whoever is all with. We're all just, and we're just running as fast as you can. Eventually you see Border Patrol or border military is getting close, and you just go into full-blown panic mode, And so where do you hide in a flat desert? And so you just start scrambling, looking around, and I don't know, maybe it was an offering from God or what it was, but we literally found tumbleweeds and hid under some tumbleweeds, hoping, because it wasn't bright yet. It was still, kind of dark, and we hid there until we felt like, all right, I think we have an opportunity. And as soon as we had the opportunity, it was right back to hightailing as fast as you can, and you're just running, and trying to get to that checkpoint. But something that I'll never forget is I remember being strapped to my dad's back, and we're hiding under or behind these tumbleweeds. And in Baha'I prayers, like, they're typically written prayers that you read, they're pre-written by the prophet or whoever. And so typically when Baha'is pray, they're praying those kinds of prayers. But I remember in this instant, I kept hearing my dad repeat over and over. Sorry, I almost said it in Farsi. Translating, please God, don't let my family die like this. Not like this. Please God, not like this. And again, I don't have a lot of explanations what's happening. I'm just in for the ride. But I'm strapped to my dad's back. I can feel his heart just beating through his back. He's trembling. He's hyperventilating. He's just terrified. I'm terrified if he's terrified, and I just remember that prayer. And then from there, it's going from that checkpoint, getting to the base of the mountain, and you're literally running like your life depends on it, because it does.
How far do you think that your dad carried you through that whole process? I'm trying to picture it in my mind, but is this a half mile, a full mile? I mean, how far do you think you went?
I mean, I would say no less than a mile, upwards of 2 miles. And that's just desert part, but the next part of this is you're climbing over a mountain.
And you did that. That was the next step, was climbing a mountain.
Yeah, and I mean, you're doing a lot of walking, and it's not like pure wall climbing, but these guys that guide you, they know the mountains where you can help you traverse it, where it's mostly walking, not climbing. But I mean, it's a mountain. You don't get to walk the whole thing, and you don't have climbing gear.
How at what point did you feel any sort of like, we made it and we're here safely? Is that when you get to the mountain, or is it when you climb the mountain? I mean, what do you remember happening next?
I mean, there's a series of events that happen on the mountain. Like at one point I started climbing a flat surface of the wall just because I got bored. My brother and one of the Pakistani guys, they had a couple of ropes, and they descended down to see if there's anything going on and see how far the drop was. And, it's a ledge that's probably from the wall to here. So maybe you have like a 3, maybe 4 foot ledge, and it was easily a 1,500 foot drop. And I climbed up the flat part of the wall, and I just remember everyone freaking out. They thought I fell, and I don't know. We don't need to get into all that, but there's a lot of, like, it's intense. There's no part of it that's not intense. There's no part that you breathe. The only time you finally breathe is when you finally get to the other side of the mountain, and you realize we're not in Iran anymore. Mm-hmm. We're in Pakistan.
How long did that process take? Does it take a whole day? Does it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. I don't even remember how long. I mean, it was at least a day. It was at least a day, yeah. But just getting to the other side of that mountain, and yeah, the cry is different, the tears are different, the breathing is different, the prayers are thank you, God, versus not like this, God. It's a euphoric moment. Unless you've experienced what it's like to not have freedom, there's no way to describe what it's like to have it and realize you have it, even for a moment. It's visceral. I mean, it takes every part of your body. It's impossible not to cry. It's impossible not to smile. It's impossible not to pray. I don't care if you're an atheist. I bet you would pray. You know, it's like one of those moments that there's no words that can do justice to how euphoric that feeling is.
Because you just spent the last whole time thinking, if we get captured or caught, this is your life.
Yeah, I mean, you're gambling your life, and you know it. You know, even as a kid who no one explained anything to, I knew that. I didn't have to have anyone explain it to me. I knew that. You know, I didn't have to do much more than listen to my dad pray, or listen to their talks or arguments or fear or panic. You know, it's just, you know, this is life and death. And yeah, so even as a kid, even if I didn't fully understand it, I fully understood the other side of that mountain.
Was it always the intention to say, okay, now we're in Pakistan, we're going to go from here to somewhere else? Or, and if so, what was the next part of the process like for you?
It's a pretty involved process because you're looking for asylum somewhere, and you're giving yourself religious refugee status. You're working through the United Nations. At that time, I mean, the most common countries people were fleeing Iran to, or from Iran to other countries, was typically like Turkey, Germany, Australia, Canada, United States. I mean, those were the 5 main countries. And the country that you're most likely to get into is where you have the most family, or where people can sponsor you, or whatever it is. So for us, it was the United States. That's where we already had some family. That's where my sister had already gone, because we had to send her a couple of years early, because in Iran at the time, as a teenage girl at the time, if men would have raped her, they would have executed her for being raped, which makes no sense. They would have executed her for adultery. So we had to send her 2 years early. So that was another reason where for us there was no backup plan. It was the United States, and we were going to stay in the slums of Pakistan as long as it took to get to the United States. And it took us 17 months to get there. And it's an involved process. They background check you. They interview you. You go see doctors. It's a very involved, intense, long, drawn-out process. You don't just get to walk in.
And you're 7, 8 years old at that time.
Yeah.
When you found out that everything had been approved and you were going to come to the United States, and you get on the plane, what do you remember from that?
It's an interesting question, because I don't actually remember much about like we get to leave now. And I think what I do remember is I was extremely sad, which sounds weird, but that's where I had built relationships. That's where my friends were. That's where I got this obsession with flying kites and kite fighting. I had just learned how to be conversationally fluent in Urdu. I just learned how to be conversationally fluent in Hindi from watching Bollywood movies and learning how to do Bollywood songs and dances. I had family across from where we lived that absolutely loved and adored me, and I did the same, you know. So for me, I don't think it was the same as my family, because they were just ecstatic, you know, to be able to leave Pakistan to come to America. But for me as a kid, I think it's true for most kids. You don't know that you're broke. You don't know that you live in the slums. All you know is the people that you have. And for me, as 8-year-old, almost 9-year-old kid, I was leaving people I love again, knowing that I wouldn't see them again. So it was actually sad for me, where the rest of my family was just celebratory, you know, so really bittersweet.
You come to the United States, do you come to Minnesota right away, or
we come?
Wow.
Yeah, we came. So this is an interesting story. We I'm gonna go back to remember the other side of the mountain moment. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We go from Pakistan, we fly, and this is long enough ago where my dad was smoking on the plane, just to give some time context. But we go from Iran. I believe we made a stop, layover in Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam, I believe we came to Minneapolis. And I don't know why, but I remember we got off, when we got to Minneapolis, we had to get off on the tarmac for some reason. And we were walking out, and we're walking to get inside to the airport, and my brother and my mom are ahead, and I'm just walking, following, and I start looking for my dad, and I don't see him, so I start looking back, and I see my dad, and he's just like frozen stiff, staring off into the distance. I was so confused. I walk up to my dad. I'm tugging at his pants. I'm like, Bubba, what are you doing? Or Dad, what are you doing? And he's just, again, he's still fixated. And he finally looks down at me. And he's got tears in his eyes. Again, anytime my dad has tears in his eyes, it's a moment. You have to be like, whoa, the non-crier is about to cry. And he grabs me, takes me aside, and he said, Armin June. And he reflected back on a conversation we had in Iran, because the flag changed in Iran and went from the lion and the sun with the sword, and it switched to the current Iranian flag with the Arabic word on there. And he told me what the difference, this is back in Iran, he told me what that flag change meant, and how this flag, the original flag, meant prosperity for us and peace and whatever. And then this new flag, it represents persecution, potential death, And so he reflected back on this conversation we had when I was probably 6 years old or whatever. And now we're in America. And he said, do you remember that conversation? I said, yeah, Dad. And he said, you remember what I said about what those flags meant? And I said, yeah. And he said, you see that flag right over there? The red, white, and blue one? I said, yeah. He said, Armin June, Azizam, this is the first time since you've been alive that you're breathing free air, and you don't have to worry about being killed or me being killed or anyone going to prison. And the only reason that is because of that flag right there. So I want you to take this in. You're free. We're free. Took about 2 minutes to fall in love with America,
Wow. Wow.
It's a beautiful country. Sorry.
What an incredible start to this conversation. As we mentioned at the top, this is just part 1. Part 2 will come out tomorrow, and it's equally as interesting and compelling, in my opinion. I hope you'll enjoy it also. If this is your first time listening to Bigger Than Belief, thank you for checking this podcast out. We are a weekly interfaith podcast through WCCO television in Minneapolis, with the whole goal to share real faith stories of people living in our community and beyond, but also to understand the big issues we see in our world through a faith lens. If you enjoyed this episode or found it interesting in any way, please take us a moment and rate us 5 stars in the app if you haven't already. That takes just a minute, but it helps us way more than you might realize. Also, please take the time to send this episode to a friend, or take a moment to share some of the posts we'll be putting out on WCCO's various social media pages. You can also find all my personal social accounts just by looking up my name. Again, we are back tomorrow with Armin's fallout from faith and finding a faith, leading him to be where he's at now. That story coming tomorrow. We'll see you then.
I'm Maria Lizignoli, and this podcast comes to you from the WCCO Podcast Studio.
I'm Johnny Connor, and this is where you'll find the latest news of the day with us on 4 Things to Know.
I'm Marielle Mose, and I bring you the stories behind the female athletes redefining the game on women in sports.
I'm Adam Duxter. Join me for a deep dive into faith and what it means to Minnesotans around the state on Bigger Than Belief.
Stay in the know on the go with the WCCO Podcast Studio. Go to WCCO.com/podcasts.